I'm Heidi Reimer-Epp, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Botanical Paperworks.
So we met at a local luncheon about purpose businesses.
Yeah.
We're all people that are trying to make some positive impact through the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain what it is that Botanical Paperworks does?
Botanical Paperworks makes seed paper. It's a special eco paper where we take paper waste from local businesses and we turn that into beautiful sheets of paper embedded with seeds right in the paper. And that paper can be planted after it's been turned into a business card or a greeting card or even bound into a book. You can plant it and then it grows into flowers and it leaves no waste behind. So it's this beautiful, sustainable, circular product that we produce.
When you described that you take paper waste from other places and then it becomes plants in the end, that really emphasizes the circular nature. How do you first start thinking, oh, paper waste, and where can we get it? How can we use it?
The story goes way, way back. It starts with my mom. So my mom was a teacher in an elementary school, and this was before recycling programs. And she noticed that the kids in her class would take a sheet of paper, a beautiful, pristine sheet of paper, scribble something on it, and then throw it out. And the waste of that paper just bothered her. And she said, well, surely she could turn that paper waste into something. So she did some research, and she found the ancient practice, the study and a process of hand paper making. And so she figured out how to take the waste paper, turn it into a mulch or a slurry, and then reform it into sheets using the traditional mold and decal.
Okay, so basically just repulping the paper.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a lot of construction paper and then white paper. And so then she would get these beautiful colors. And she taught the kids in her class. So she brought it into the full curriculum. And the point is that the kids would write their poems and stories, and then they would make the sheets of paper, they'd bind it into a book, and then have this keepsake of their things that they wrote. Okay.
So then that idea of the classroom waste, the paper that is used once, it's got like 4 scribbles on it, and then they're like, oh, I'm done. That turns into taking waste from businesses. Where's the transformation there? Like, where's the change that led to that being possible?
Well, I mean, that goes back to then how Botanical Paperworks was started in the first place. But the next step then in the journey was I was getting married, and I really loved the look of the paper that she made. And so I asked her, could she do the wedding programs? So she made those wedding programs out of handmade paper, and our guests absolutely loved them and wanted to know, where did you get these wedding programs from? And I said, well, my mom made them.
You can't buy them.
Exactly. And also she'd been drying them, making the paper and drying them all over the dining room table and the kitchen. And so that's where those things had been made. And so then we started talking about, maybe there's a business here, because we also at the same time were seeing things in the marketplace, like in stationery stores, of this stationery of a similar look. And of course she knew how to make it, and I had a marketing degree and I was working in business. So maybe we should turn that into a business. So that's how the conversation got started.
Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about your personal journey of, like, you were in business before. And so there was this moment where there's this idea that you could take somewhere. You say you have background in marketing and you were doing that. What made it feel possible to go from working in standard business to running your own thing?
It seemed like a crazy dream, but as you say, somehow it seemed possible. I think maybe because I could envision the process of making the paper, and also I really love paper myself, and so I could think about things that I would want to turn it into. So we made a little test group of products, like some cards and some envelopes out of the handmade paper. And then we turned that into a little gift set. And we actually decided that we would go shop it around, because I think we were wanting to see, like, sort of test the concept at that point. And so we said we're going to go see these 5 different stores. And if 3 out of the 5 placed an order, we would see that as like confirmation that we were onto something good. Well, all 5 of them ordered. So at that time, we were like, this is good affirmation then that this is something that would be appealing to the marketplace. But I was still traveling for that other job that I had. And so we were trying to fit in the paper making and the assembly and the marketing of it and the accounting and bookkeeping, everything around that. So at a certain point, with the my mom, did I mention that she was actually now part of the business? So she and I, we decided that we were done talking about it. Actually, we'd been talking about it for so long that I said, okay, either we're going to launch this business or we're never going to talk about it again, because I just can't, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Yeah. And I decided that I would quit my job and give this a go. So I was full-time, my mom was part-time, and we founded Botanical Paperworks based on those sales to those 5 stores.
Wow. So you got those 5 confirmations from those stores, and that's like the first order. It's so rare to hear that successful for an initial ask and offer.
Yeah.
So then how do you jump to fulfilling those 5?
Yes, because the raw materials required for 5 was more than we'd ever had before.
Yeah.
And so up until that point, in terms of, it was paper with flowers in it. So we didn't have the seeds yet.
Right.
But we were using flower petals from our own gardens, but we needed a lot more in order to do those orders.
Yeah.
So we came up with an ingenious solution. We approached a local florist and said, we would love to take your garbage flowers.
Just the cast-offs.
Yeah, and we'll use that in our paper making. So she would collect a bag of cast-offs, and at the end of the week, we would come by and pick it up. And that was our first source of, waste, turning it into a beautiful product.
Yeah.
Picking out the moldy bits, using the good stuff.
Yeah, you take off the little brown edges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at every point, you're thinking, how can we use other people's waste and turn it into something beautiful?
Yeah, because you know what? Actually, that circularity is also good business practice. Because when you're a cash-strapped startup, getting cast-off free petals, it also makes economic sense. But at the time, now that as I look back, I'm realizing that's also using a waste stream for good.
So then, I know a lot of people are thinking, okay, I couldn't go and approach 5 businesses and ask them like, oh, would you buy this thing from me that I've never made at scale before?
Yeah.
Like, it's a big jump, but I think people might not realize just how simple it is to make that ask. What was it like in that moment to go and make that request or see if people were interested?
Yeah, I remember being simultaneously incredibly nervous and also elated. Because I think we had such a great concept that we were so jazzed about it that it was really, really exciting. But it was really scary to pick up the phone at the time and say, hi, and introduce myself, and could I make an appointment, and could I come and show you what we have, and then show up and gulp, and here's what we have. Do you like it? I hope you like it.
Here's our tester package.
Like my baby. And but then, when the first one happened, that gave us some confidence. And then the second one, that she'd like to place an order. That gave us more confidence. And I think that's how it goes in scaling a business, is that you get these little bits, these little boosts, and you just pull that confidence in and then use it for the next scary thing.
Because there's always another next scary thing.
And it's bigger than the last one.
Every single time. It's just so interesting to see the core of the seeds in the paper. So actually, you were describing how at the beginning it was just petals.
Yes.
When did the shift happen to seed paper, where you can grow plants out of the paper itself?
So we started with petaled paper for the wedding market. That's what we decided to target.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So we had some advertising in some wedding magazines across Canada, and we were selling by mail order.
Okay.
And then there was a time where the internet was really growing, and so we decided to go online with our little business, and that started to get us a bigger market reach. So then pretty quickly we were selling into the United States, because in the US they were online much sooner than Canadians were, and plus there's more of them. So then as we're doing that, we're doing this e-commerce thing, then we became noticed by a UK publishing company called Porto, and they reached out to us and said they wanted to write a book called 300 Paper Making Recipes, and they were looking for some paper makers to write this book.
Right.
Would we like to do it?
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so we're like, of course we're gonna do it. The next big scary thing.
Yeah.
Never written a book before, have no idea how, but just
but writing one chapter. One chapter can't be that hard.
No, it was the entire book we had to write. No, it wasn't just a chapter. Yeah, you can look us up on Amazon. Actually, in the end, we wrote 3 books on paper making and bookbinding. We being my mom and I, Mary Reimer. But yeah, so we said that we would write this book. So now we had to come up with 300 paper making recipes, and
that name made me assume, we're going to share our recipe as one.
As the
300.
one. No, we did 300. Yeah. So we formed the outline, and we did it in grouping. So one chapter was on texture, and then one was on fibrous plants, and then another one was about flowers. And so then in that process, as we were doing the book, of course we knew how to use petals and we knew how to use the stalks, but then also we'd become aware of the fact that you could put the seeds into the paper. So we gave that a try, and actually it worked. The seeds would form into the paper just like the petals did, stay there, and then we could plant it and it would grow into the flowers that we had embedded in it. So we kept that out of the book. We didn't put that in the book itself, but we did then spend the next 3 years figuring out how to commercialize it. So how to scale up from these little test batches into making lots and lots of the sheets of paper.
I'd love to talk about that then for a second, because I know the process of going from small batches to industrial sized batches. There's a whole host of new kinds of problems you have to solve. It's not just how does the paper formula function, it's how does it function at heat? How does it function in a larger scale? Because the chemistry changes at different scales. The way things bind changes at different scales, and just the space you need, because as you can see, we're in the warehouse right now. The space needs are vastly different. So what were some of the first problems that were really sticky that you then had to work through?
Well, you're a very astute person for knowing that this is a problem. I've never met anybody who would, so you're going to appreciate this story.
Okay.
So one of the things that we specialized in the early days was inclusions. That's what it's called when you take a petal or some kind of glitter or like pieces of yarn or whatever, and you put that into paper. And so we had a contract to make Christmas cards, holiday cards, for a wild rice producer. And so she wanted the wild rice in the paper. So we could do that, and we tested that. We did the test batch, and a little bit about our process is that we make the pulp first, and then we add the inclusion, and then we form it into sheets. We press it, and then it gets dried between layers of cardboard. So with this wild rice, we were using a cotton base, like leftover cotton from the cotton industry, actually like waste cotton again.
So
the waste thing.
Like cut-offs of bolts of cloth.
And then it's turned into a paper product that we can use in paper making. So we did that in the test batch size, and then it worked, and the client loved the product, and then we scaled up. But what we didn't account for was the factor of time. And so looking back, we realize now that as the rice sat with the paper pulp in the vat, that it became very gelatinous, and it actually changed sort of the structure of the paper. So that we pulled the sheets, we pressed them, and then we dried them. But then when we opened up the dryer system, we couldn't peel that paper off the cardboard.
You'd overcooked the rice.
Yeah, and it was glue, and it was stuck to the cardboard. And we had ruined the entire dryer system because that it's meant to be reusable. We'll take the paper off and put on the next paper and dry it using a flow of air. So we were just in a panic because what are we going to do? The whole thing was wrecked, and we'd wrecked all of our equipment. So we said, well, maybe we could roll it out and actually dry it on the floor. We had a facility at the time that had like vast linoleum floors. And so we pulled the sheets, pressed it, put it on the floor, but then we sat there watching it dry. And then as it was drying, it was kind of pulling up and popping, and then turning into these crinkled, very interesting sculptural items, but not paper that we could turn into holiday cards. So that was our first lesson in scale up. It does not represent the test batch. It is its own unique thing. You have to scale up separately. We ended up taking like 10% wild rice, 90% of the paper base, and turning that into a beautiful holiday card for them, and it was a success. But we probably shed some tears there. The entrepreneurial journey is paved with tears.
Once you have that, once you know how that works, it's so good.
And that experience then also gives us, we feed that into our next iteration of whatever we're doing. So the experience also gives us confidence, gives us knowledge. And so you can just kind of see like entrepreneurial journey is this accumulation of knowledge and experience that then you use to keep going, scale up.
Now, I'd like to shift to some of the broader strategies that you've used to take Botanical Paperworks from, let's say, mid-scale to large-scale. You said you were focusing on weddings, greeting cards, and other event-style stationery. And that makes sense to me because those are the ones that have recurring need. It's a regular customer group that you can anticipate what their needs are going to be. So how did you go about figuring out that fit and making the product that really fit those people?
For the wedding group?
Yeah, sure. Let's start there.
Well, we started with the wedding group through our own research.
Mm-hmm.
We did market research, and we looked through the bridal magazines and things to see what was selling. So that's how we launched that. But actually, the way that we got to a larger size company, the next step for us was going into stationery. Because one of the problems with the wedding industry is that it's one-off orders.
Yeah.
And so it was cumbersome and expensive to find those one-time customers. But we could also use the same kind of energies and cultivate relationships with stationery store and department store and gift store owners.
Yeah.
Like the ones that we had originally sold those cards to.
Yeah.
So the next step for us was to start going to the National Stationery Show in New York every year. And we did that for 7 years and developed accounts across Canada and the US selling stationery. So that was like traditional greeting cards packaged up, hand-bound books, and different non-customized printed items.
Yeah, okay, so it was classic account-based sales where you're going out, you're building relationships with individual stores or chains and going, we can provide these things, here's why you'll love it, here's why your customers will love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And then after that, then through our e-commerce business, we realized that there was an opportunity back in the wedding market for wedding favors. This was a new up and coming industry. So then we created a product line of wedding favors and sold that through the website. One of the things that we've always put a lot of importance into is being diversified in terms of our customer channels. And so that's just been a good place for us because as a niche business, we need to go to where the customers are. So we have multiple channels that we sell through now, but that's where it started, where we were adding these additional channels.
Right. And that makes sense because you're selling a very specialist product. It's not like you can make variations on this very easily. It takes a lot of experimentation to make variations on a complicated seed paper that is already differentiated from paper more generally. So diversifying the customers instead makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, so we diversified the distribution channel, the customer type, and the geographic territory as well. Eventually in our storyline, we get into bigger exporting into Canada, of course Canada, but then the US and Europe and the UK.
I want to talk about another different developmental shift.
Sure.
Because I know you're registered as a B-Corp.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that's like and what B-Corp is about?
Yeah. Oh, we're so excited. We just received our certification with B-Corp this year.
Oh, okay.
And for us, it is just such an important step in having that outside validation in terms of saying, yes, we've checked out these people and the claims that they're making, they are true.
Yeah.
They are doing what they're saying they're doing. Our journey would have started back in 2018 when we first did the B Impact Assessment.
Yep.
That's the big questionnaire that you complete to see where do you stand in terms of points. You need a minimum of 80 points to get certified. And so we did the questionnaire then. We had already always been using the business for good. That's the theme, that's the motto of B Corp. Even from early 2000s when we founded the business, this was an important thing for us to be considering people, planet, and along with profit. So in 2018, when we did that questionnaire, we were taking all of the initiatives that we had been doing and now putting that into the questionnaire. And we realized at that time that we were not ready to proceed with doing the full application. But we used the information from the B Impact Assessment to increase the number of initiatives that we had internally.
Right.
Which we had been reporting on sort of in an ESG style of our own report to our customers and to our other interested parties. And then we went back and last year, finally now we had finished some of our projects that we had on the go and we had a bigger team. So we were able to do the full assessment and then go through the certification and receive that certification in May. Right.
Okay. How challenging would you say it was to be able to make those changes that were required to hit that minimum 80 points?
Yeah, for us, by then we had been working with the ESG model for so long that it was work, but it was doable. And I think what I found was that B Corp challenged us to take the things that we were doing, but to put them into written policy. Because by having it in policy, then it's baked in, it's there, it's repeatable, it's going to be endure. It's stable, exactly. Yeah. So there was work of that nature, and then also there were some other ideas for ways that we could up our game and do more for the 5 different B impact areas. And so it was It was a lot of work, but it was worth it.
So I noticed that on your B assessment, you have the mission lock portion. Could you explain what that is and what it means for Botanical Paperworks?
Yeah, that was the requirement for certification, where we changed our bylaws in order to state that we will consider people and planet along with profit at equal measures when we're making strategic decisions. So that is part of the way we run our strategy, the way we do our strategic planning, the way as a leadership team and as shareholders that we make these decisions for considering all interested parties in running the company.
Right. Okay. And how does it feel for you as the leader, as the CEO of Botanical Paperworks, to have that mission lock? How does it, like, because it's very obvious that you're making this to last. It's not meant to be just you and then when you retire, this goes away. Yeah. So what does the mission lock mean for you as a leader? Yeah, there's that aspect of longevity. And so now it is now there. It is now encoded. It's in, we call it as well our Botanical Paperworks DNA. And those are our stated mission, vision, and values. But there's also in the legal documents. So I think it's just a really, really important thing for us to have done for longevity, as you say. So I know throughout this whole process, you've been describing the using the waste is a big part of it. Having an end purpose for the paper, that it doesn't just go in the trash or get recycled, that it's planted, that the flowers then come up. What other measurements or impacts are you measuring? Well, okay, so we measure so much that so a couple of examples. So we measure the waste that we produce in the production of our paper. Okay. And we endeavor to either reuse or compost 100% of our waste. So things will include reject paper, offcuts. Yeah. And so we measure that. We measure our water usage, and we're, of course, measure our carbon emissions. And so we're Climate Smart certified, and so we have a reduction plan, so we're always looking to be lowering that year over year. We are measuring our give back programs. We have a number of products where we donate 10% of the proceeds to different organizations, so we're measuring our impact with those give back programs. We measure the diversity of our workforce, the wages, and the level of seniority within the company. So much. We measure a lot. Yeah. But it's important because, especially when you start looking at the B-Corp assessment, the idea behind the B-Corp is that once you qualify, you're trying to just improve the scores each year over year, trying to find those ways to continue to make resilient, long-term purpose-built businesses. Yeah. And to be measuring them is the first part, to say, oh yes, we know where we are and where we're heading. Yeah, that's right. Because without that data, we can't make the decisions. So it was really interesting as an example when we first measured our carbon emissions. Right. Had no idea how that was going to come out, and also which scope we were having those emissions in. So that was really eye-opening. And then once our eyes are open and we understand where it's coming from, then we can decide how to reduce it. Right. But the measurement is really, really key. Do you have any specific examples of within the reducing your carbon emissions, like any particular process or element that was standout when you were trying to reduce those? Yeah, it was really interesting to see our corporate travel, because of course during COVID, when we suddenly weren't traveling, we could see that go down to zero. Yeah. And then that had us very important internal conversations about the purpose of travel. Yeah. And so I heard somebody speak on this recently about how he and his company, and this would reflect what we're doing as well, where we're saying, we still need to travel because we still have a business and we need to connect with customers. Yeah. But of course, we're going to offset when we do that. And let's think about which are the travel commitments that really are the most worthwhile ones. Do those ones, and then any fluff, we don't do that. Or while we had to go to Toronto a couple weeks ago, while we're there, we're going to go visit some clients rather than coming back a second time. Right. So these are the conversations that it spurs internally to think about, well, how can we, if we are going to emit, how can we use that the most effectively and to the best way possible? Yeah, but finding those efficiencies, it's the reduce portion, and finding efficiency. Like you described, why bother making a second trip if you're already in the place where the clients are going to be? That makes sense in terms of time, it makes sense in terms of energy, it makes sense in terms of cost. There's a lot of gains that happen when we start being intentional about these things. Yeah, absolutely. And then that's where sustainability is also a good business case as well, because you also save money not making multiple trips. Another example that comes to mind was realizing how much air freight
pollutes compared to a ground transportation. And so then how we could change our own practices with our inventory system to make sure that we didn't have to do these last minute orders because we suddenly needed it air shipped in. And then also on the website and then with our customers, really making them aware of what the emissions are for air and making it more of an incentive for them to use ground wherever possible.
Especially if it doesn't make a difference for the customer, then they can self-select into that. Okay, neat. So just making it visible and making it an option has made a difference? Sharing
that information with them so that the customers understand and it makes them pause and think, oh yeah, I could go with ground because we're all kind of like, we want it tomorrow. But for the sake of the environment, if you can wait a few days and have it delivered by ground, I mean, that's a win. Win-win.
Absolutely. I'd like to return to your personal story because you very quickly mentioned that you were working in marketing, that you had other business, and that you started this with your mom.
Yeah.
What was the personal journey that you went through, both before and because I know you've been running Botanical for over 20 years, through running the business? Because just starting it is just one step in a wider journey. But could we start there of the education, the experience you had leading into starting Botanical, and then how your experience has changed throughout?
Yeah, when we first started Botanical Paperworks, with my mom there half-time and me full-time, we did it all.
Right.
And so it was an interesting personal experience there because I had, like we were talking about, I had a business degree with a major in marketing. I didn't take one single entrepreneurship course though. I really thought I was going to go work in a bank. I don't know why. I guess those were the jobs at the time. But there was a bit of a recession going on. I ended up getting a job in pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
And that's where I first had my work experience. But when we started the company, now I was doing everything. My mom took care of the paper making, but I was doing the assembly and then all the jobs that go with running a business.
Yep.
It was so eye-opening because what I had been taught was like high-level accounting. But now I needed to just do a journal entry, for bookkeeping, and I didn't know how to do that. I kind of glossed over that part of business school.
Yeah.
So it was an incredibly rich time of learning. So I would do things like get a book out of the library on like accounting for dummies and speed read that so that I could do my own books. And I remember when we got the website I took out, it was actually part of that Dummies series. It was HTML for Dummies. And I read it over the August long weekend, 3 days, sped read, HTML. Okay, now I know how to program and could go do a website. But it was a very rich time of taking in the knowledge and learning all these things, marketing, of course, but like more hands-on marketing than I was used to.
Right, the doing rather than the theoretical of making a marketing plan.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I had gone from selling millions of dollars of this pharmaceutical product around the world to rejoicing over $100 sale.
Yep.
It was very humbling and very exciting.
Yeah.
Very stressful, a lot of personal growth. Because I think when you start a business, you really face your own worries and fears and however they manifest in whatever realm they're in.
Constantly. And the stresses and anxieties, they only shift over time. It doesn't ever feel like they really go away.
Yeah.
Just they've transformed based on what the current problem is or the next need will be.
Because using the bookkeeping as an example, that was a very happy day when I hired my first bookkeeper, who was then with us for, I think, almost 24 years.
Right.
And that I could hand that off and say, this is not my area of expertise. I was having to do crazy things like bribe myself with McDonald's French fries. If you do this month's bookkeeping, you can go to McDonald's and get fries. That was not sustainable.
No.
So Betty
sometimes
came
necessary.
On. Yes, I mean, whatever you resort to, whatever means, right?
Yep.
So then that was representative, though, of the company getting bigger, and then these jobs that now I could start to hire for and hand off. And that was another exciting time because now I was able to bring in people with expertise, real knowledge in those areas, and to be able to say, this is not my strong point, but it is yours. So please welcome to the team. Join us. Let's do this together. And I repeated that process over and over again as I built the team and hired more and more people.
Yeah.
But then the challenge for me as a leader changed. So now it was less about the tactical, and now it was about setting the strategy. It was about making the good hires, and coaching and leading and growing, but also finding the opportunities and leading us into the next growth areas of whatever they were going to be.
What's part of your team that really just makes you proud? What are the elements that really lift you up, or that the team has lifted up?
Well, okay, so my team is so committed And they are committed to doing this good work, to spreading seed paper around the world, to creating a great product, to really serving our customers. And they're committed to working together as well. And it doesn't always involve me anymore. The company is running with this incredible teamwork between all the departments of the company. There are so many things, though, that I really respect. I can see the individual, like each person has come to Botanical Paperworks with their own story, their own journey that brought them to this moment. Sometimes we talk about the stories of how did you end up getting this job at Botanical Paperworks? Some people have come from other countries and really traveled many, many kilometers to get to Canada, to get to this moment of working here. Others have journeyed metaphorically very far to get here, and yet here we all are creating this company together. So I love seeing everyone's interest in learning and growing themselves. We have a product that is perfect for the growing metaphor, but we really emphasize growth, and people embrace that. So they come in with their great skill set, but then they become even more, and they learn and they support each other in their learning. That's really awesome.
I definitely resonate with that. And that to me is the benefit of building an organization, building a team, is that you see all the different things that are needed to make it function. But then you go, I'm not that great at this one.
Yeah. Let's
find somebody who is and let them run. Just because they'll go far further than I can alone, and then we together can go even further than that.
Yes. Yeah.
To me, building the team and partnerships are a core way of functioning. And so I love hearing the stories about that and how it goes from one person to many people working together.
Yeah, we won an award last week, a Supplier of the Year through our association. And it was me and our Director of Sales and Marketing and our corporate salesperson. We went up to receive it in Toronto. But this award, everybody, the entire team won that award, because you don't get chosen as Supplier of the Year without everyone doing their thing in the best way and the most amazing way to deliver an incredible product at the end. So the team warms my heart. It is each person and then the team together. It's one of the best parts of running a business.
And so are there any new challenges? So you've got this team, you're doing more managing and strategy than the tactics, the day-to-day stuff. So how does that change your role, your position, the way you view yourself?
Well, what changed as the team grew bigger and as the company grew bigger was always, of course, I knew that I wanted to manage this for the long term. Like I was not looking to do a flip. And so thinking about scaling sustainably, was always on my mind.
Yeah.
And as scaling requires cash investment, and how are we going to do that? And so some of the money stuff, the numbers became bigger. And so then that was an area that I really needed to focus on and to make sure that I was also growing in my expertise. But also this management style of having a bigger company is different than when it's like everyone's hands-on. And so I was aware of the fact that some CEOs also were not able to make that transition into a bigger company. So I did a lot of professional development and self-exploration and learning and knowledge of myself as well, to try to work through any blind spots or areas that I wasn't good at, so that I could lead the team well.
Yeah.
But I think that the challenges are bigger and the worries are bigger. But also the opportunities are bigger, so the excitement is bigger.
Right.
At that size.
Okay. Yeah, I think you touched on that piece that I feel like people are naturally inclined to a couple different styles of leadership in things. There are the creators, the creative ones who like starting things, the starters is usually how I call it. Then you have maintainers, people who, once they've got a system going, they can run it, they can keep going. And then optimizers, the people who are making little tweaks here and there, and they take very different roles and attitudes to do that. And it sounds like you've shifted from the starter into the maintainer and optimizer roles.
Yeah, I'm a good fit for manufacturing because I love process improvement.
Okay.
And I figured that out back in university when I had my first summer job working for an aerospace company, which was manufacturing. And so I think that remains consistent, that I love looking for ways to do things better, easier, faster, cheaper. But yeah, that's very true what you say in terms of my responsibilities have changed that way. And then also my interest and my ability has also changed. For
people who want to run or start social purpose businesses, what's one thing that you would say to them?
Thinking about Botanical Paperworks when it was a young company, and realizing that I had this business and it was mine to do whatever I wanted with, and that what I wanted to do was to use it to essentially leave the earth a better place than I found it, that saying. So I think my advice to others in terms of thinking about where they would want to go with their own companies would be to think about which area they have a special interest in. So for us, it's always been the environment. That's where we started, and start there, because that's where you have your skill level, your interest, and you're just a natural affinity too. Yeah, and I also think choosing a framework is really helpful, because when you are thinking about what is the good that you want to do, and to have a framework, whether that is a B-Corp framework, and there are 5 different areas within B-Corp, whether it is the traditional ESG, or even if you're looking at the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, to use that as a framework, it also helps you to focus your activities and also your reporting, and gives you a place to start. And you don't need to jump into B-Corp. You can start with your own initiatives and then evolve it from there.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that list social enterprise, because
I don't even know that model.
Oh, no. Well then we get to have a talk after this. Then. Because in social enterprise, it's like an extension of B Corp, where in addition to the mission lock, there's also a profit lock, where if the business is ever sold, a certain percentage is dedicated to the mission, and it says, I as an individual, I will build this, and I can still build it to make a retirement, but it's not like I'm going to go and be fabulously wealthy, but instead a significant portion is dedicated to the mission even afterwards if the business gets sold.
Okay, cool.
And there's the reinvestment of profits. So you're already doing most of that, because the reinvestment of profits into the waste reduction, into the social and environmental elements, a lot of that's already present.
Yeah, that's right.
And even in social enterprise, they don't say you got to jump right there. You can start something, you can make the model sustainable, and then work it in, just like you're doing with B Corp, where you're saying, this is where I'm starting, and then we're going to work from there. We're going to make it better. We're going to put it into policy.
Yeah, I like that iterative nature of any model that allows you to do that, because getting started is the hardest part.
Getting started is so hard.
Right, so you could take those few steps, and people discount the small things that they can do, but small adds up, we know that, and also small gets you going. And I think that's really important.
Where would you see the potential in systems change here? Because like shifting away from single-use disposable to single-use eco, because I mean, it's going to be planted, it is going to become the flowers that then sprout up. Is there an opportunity for the culture to change around what's normal, what's expected of a company?
Okay. Yes, and we're seeing that already, because we're seeing buyers and user customers that are more aware of sustainability and the importance of that. So society is shifting, and we're seeing an urgency with climate change. And so we're seeing the customers ask the industry to do better, to offer them products that are made sustainably, made with less harm, with no harm, that take into account all interested parties in the production of this, and also looking downstream what is happening with the afterlife of this product. And they're thinking about that. So that is driving the suppliers to produce better, and also to produce with longevity. I would say there's more consideration for the quality of the product, so that it lasts longer and can exist through multiple extended use. And then within our industry, we have distributors and we have suppliers as well. And so then when there's an economic need to produce better and more sustainably, then that drives the supplier. And also those end user customers are so powerful, and the shareholders of these companies, they're asking for transparency. And so we're doing more reporting as an industry, and then that also then gets the ball rolling in terms of improvement, because now these numbers are being made public. So it is, the change is happening, and I think it's starting to pick up speed, and it's definitely being driven by players at every stage in the selling process, from supplier, distributor, and end user.
And that sounds very similar to the work that Buy Social Canada is doing with social procurement. They're doing lots of work with cities, province, and federal governments to help build in policies that say, with every purchase, because the government's a massive purchaser, how can we make sure this serves our communities? How can we make sure that with each purchase, we're doing more good than harm? And building that into policy on governmental level. Similar supply chain things, just from the other angle. Instead of from individual consumer, it's from government as purchaser.
I'm really excited to think about what the transformation that's happening in supply chain.
Yeah.
And when I think about students graduating with their degree in supply chain management and getting out there in the world with their Gen Z millennial interest already in sustainability, and then getting in and affecting change through the supply chain, whether it's like simple things like asking for your product to be delivered without plastic, or supporting a more diverse supplier base. There's just so many things that can be done that really support this work of social enterprises and doing good in our world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. It's been great having you, and it's a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
And if people want to find out more about Botanical Paperworks, where can they find you?
Please come online and visit us at botanicalpaperworks.com. And we're also on all the social media platforms, Botanical Paperworks.